I'm WG and it's time we talk about dedicated 5-star partners, more specifically as well the memory archive and the ability to buy any of these partners guaranteed with 300 memories of the Radiant Hero, which also is the preferred acquisition method for these 5-star partners, and that is due to the partner banner itself being way less of a priority, nothing you really want to summon on due to it being a 1 in 11 to get the partner you're looking for your favorite character, or even like a 3 in 11 for your favorite 3 characters, if you get what I mean. It's also only going to get more unrealistic in the future with, for example, Yuki's banner ending in Westmacott, making it a 1 in 12 and the like. And then also something that just has to be mentioned, obviously you can also go for these character dupes, though in general, unless it's like an E2, E4, E6, getting a partner on top of a character tends to be more effective. Like, for example, getting a 5-star and their 5-star partner is better than getting a 5-star twice, usually. Something else that can also happen in the future is that these memories will feature limited time heroes, so let's say anniversary heroes, collab heroes. So if you really want to be super safe with them, you better hold on to them until then, and then I guess buy limited dupes. That's also something you should at least know about. So this is the way we'll be doing it. We'll be doing it from A to Z, following the ABCs, going through every partner. I'll be giving him a ranking first, and then we'll talk a bit about the reasons why, some more character and partner related specifics. So our first character on the list has to be Asteria, and Asteria I would put anywhere between high A tier to S tier. So let's for now have her in high A tier, and let's talk about Asteria. So, Asteria is Haru's dedicated partner. Asteria, if outside of Haru, mostly would work on somebody like an Owen, because she's mainly focused on this 2 cost or more cards, and what she does with her passive is a additive 25%, so a plus 25% to any 2 or more costing cards. So for Haru it would be her Anchor Shot and the AoE variant with the single target bonus. And then also we have a multiplicative increase of 10% to any cards with the pulverized tag, which again fully refers to Haru's cards. And then we have the Light of the Arc, which allows you to add up to a plus 20% times 10 to the next attack card used, again in additive damage. So if the total mana on your hand is anywhere from 0 to 10, that is how much you add to it, so up to 200%. So you could, for example, take an Anchor Shot from 400 to 600%. So Asteria, if you have a Haru, especially if you have a Haru at E2 or higher, is almost a must. It's just the biggest synergy, the biggest damage boosts, and overall she's just made for Haru. There's no two ways about it. And on that note as well, at least Haru herself, she is as relevant as need be. She does what she does. She can really just use one skill, get a skill, hit a skill, use the skill again, get the skill back, use it again. It's just a pretty straightforward combo with some pretty disgusting damage, especially against these Justice enemies, and that's because she's double effective. Not only does she have the extra multiplier against Justice enemies when you face them, no, you also have the extra damage from the pulverized tag, which is a further 20% multiplicative multiplier. So that is Asteria. Next on our list we have Bria, and Bria I would put straight into S tier. It is pretty incredible what she can do, so let's talk about it. So Bria is Charon's dedicated partner, and what she does is that when the assigned combatant generates a card, attack card damage increases by 10% for 1 turn, stacking up to 3 times, so up to a 30% multiplicative damage increase to any attack cards of the assigned combatant. And then when the assigned combatant generates a status ailment card for the first time, plus 25% attack card damage. And that's also something they fixed in the latest patch, and that is this also now triggers if you use the Oath of Vanity to transform Charon's futilities from futilities into like from the futility into the attack card variant. So overall you get a 30% multiplier and a 25% additive bonus. You can also use her on Tressa, especially because the first part, the 30% damage increase, also works for her when she generates a card. But this is where it really lies. This is what makes her so great. And that is, she has the ability to exhaust all status ailment cards, including those changed from status ailment with Oath of Vanity, and curse cards in the discard pile, so curse cards, even more QOL, and then increases the damage amount of the designated combatant's attack card by 10% for each exhausted card for one turn. It doesn't even have to be futilities. You could even start curse stacking. And here's the important part. Normally, Charon's game plan goes to following, right? You use your Charon and you play your cards, you get your futilities, and then you also have to spend the extra mana, the extra AP to get rid of these futilities, because otherwise, if you don't exhaust them, you don't scale with the black hole, you don't get the extra damage, you lose out on other scaling opportunities, on exhausting opportunities, and the like. And that's where she just comes in. Like, for example, how Charon's ult, without E3, right, can only exhaust from hand. She can exhaust every single futility that is available anywhere to you. And that is incredibly powerful. And for example, just as like a mind example, right? Think about it like this. She also then increases it by 10% for each. So if you exhaust 10 futilities, that is a further 100% multiplier on top of already the black hole or whatever currently is scaling already from the exhausted futilities. So yeah, this ability to exhaust from the discard pile is really damn good. And then once you also get Charon to, for example, the E3, you can basically exhaust so many cards, scale so fast, and just deal such a crazy amount of damage that Bria Charon is a no-brainer. If you're playing Charon, you better be having your eyes on Bria. So that is Bria. And then just, I guess, as a side note to at least compare them, you can obviously also run Antea, which you could get from the battle pass with, for example, the next rotation, but her ego skill is nowhere near as versatile, and also this doesn't stack. So it really is go Bria or go home when it comes to Charon's ramp up, ease of use, and tippity top damage potential. Next up we have a Janet, who is Luke's dedicated partner, and we'll put her into A. Alright, so let's quickly talk about Janet. First off, you add 9% critical chance of the assigned combatant's attack cards costing 1 or less, so anything costing 1 or less just has a 9% higher crit chance, which can pretty much work with all of Luke's cards. Then when the assigned combatant uses 5 bullet cards, creates a random handgun bullet card, increases damage amount of the created card by 50%. So, important to note here is you are always going to create a Luke handgun bullet no matter who you use Janet on. You could run Janet on Lucas, you could run Janet on Renoa, who are our other 2 bullet characters, and still she only mainly works with Luke, and that is due to Lucas not having like the ability to summon that many bullets or use that many bullets, and Renoa in general, rather than using her bullets, having them be discarded, leaving open Luke. And the main reason why we have her in A rather than straight S is you kind of need a bit of investment in your Luke already, and that is with this E2 that allows you to turn 3 bullets into 5. And if you paid attention, it did say every 5 bullets, so now you're pretty much guaranteed to trigger it at least once every turn. Obviously, if you make 10 bullets, then she's still going to create another one, so it's not turn bound. But most of the time, like without Luke's E2, you're going to be a bit harder pressed to have a, you could say, big amount of uptime on this, on the skill itself. So let's go back to Janet real quick. So yeah, and then obviously here we get the 50% multiplicative increase, which I gotta be honest with you here is a bit more weird, because there is some bullets, or I think all bullets of Luke tend to be below 100% base multiplier. So this one is less effective than it looks like, unless, for example, she were to create like a bullet at obviously above 100% multiplier. So it's a bit weird. Like, for example, there's the Mark bullet that only has like 36%, so it only would gain like plus 18. But then we have lastly the Ego skill, which deals 150% AoE damage. AoE damage on partners is always really useful, can help you with clearing ads, can help you with clearing boss mechanics, can help you with farming, and then you increase the damage amount of designated combatants bullet cards by 20%, so another 20% multiplicative increase to bullet damage. So Janet is pretty sweet if you're a Luke fanatic, and if you have already invested into your Luke, Janet is just that logical next step forward. And the reason why I don't necessarily recommend her much for Renoa is obviously due to Renoa not using these bullets themselves, and also her having this run. If Renoa's critical chance is greater than 60%, an additional 10% to that value, to the Dirge bullet, which is quite important. And instead of giving flat out crit chance, what Janet gives is only a crit chance for card specifics, so it doesn't help Renoa in obtaining that 60% crit chance. Next up, we have Erica, who we're going to put into A as well, though a bit closer to that B section, so let me explain. So first off, Erica's partner effect is that the assigned combatant's counterattacks increase by 15% damage, and when the assigned combatant uses a skill or upgrade card, there's a 50% chance to gain a counterattack, with the Ego skill being a 200% defense-based AoE damage, 1 counter, and if an enemy's anticipated action, meaning the action they are about to take this turn, is an attack, you get an extra counterattack stack. So if, for example, 4 enemies want to attack you, you get 4 counterattacks from that shenanigan. So now, why is she only A, maybe more towards B instead of being a instant no-brainer? That is, for once, a bit more in the direction of, if you want to play a more defensive Magna, getting the counter damage increase isn't as important as it would have been to, for example, get a defense increase, but also because there's a somewhat comparable option in the battle pass, and that is a Shalene right here, which gives you health and shield gain increase for that more tanky playstyle, as well as also defense based damage when the assigned combatant gains a counter attack, though then again the difference here is this is plus 15, whereas the boost of Erica is a by 15%, and then you have a shield skill that just allows you to kind of keep shield and take it over into the next turn. So one of the reasons why is because she's not too far above doing something super unique where you couldn't be just running a 4-star partner like maybe even Wilhelmina, who has that extra synergy in more defense, so more damage, and also dealing more damage to vulnerable enemies, which is just something that Magna herself naturally does. So Erica doesn't really have this like, this crazy wow factor, but that doesn't mean she's a bad option. You can still obviously also run her on, for example, Maribel as well, right? Because she's a counter boosting unit, or any people with counters in the future, or even units with non-counters that you just build with counter items. That's kind of like up to you. Alright, next up we have Kiara, and Kiara we're actually going to put into B due to her, honestly in my opinion, being pretty lackluster. So, Kiara herself, Hunter partner, says that if there are 10 or more cards in the graveyard, the assigned combatant's attack card damage increases by 15%. Meaning that, especially for the first turn, maybe even second turn, and also after a deck shuffle, this damage bonus itself just isn't active. And then when a card is discarded for the first time by the assigned combatant each turn, plus 25% damage amount to attack cards. So it's an additive plus 25% damage increase. But the problem here would be the fact that not all of Renoa's cards allow you to always discard a card to take advantage of this bonus here. Yes, there is some cards there, but not all of them do so. And it's also saying here that it's by the assigned combatant rather than a card of the combatant getting discarded. But that is honestly still a pretty good passive skill. The I guess issue a little bit comes in with the ego skill being a bit lackluster, and that is not only is it single target damage, but it's also a 200% base plus 20% damage by the number of cards in the graveyard. Even in fights that go really long, not only is this hard to time because you have to use it before a deck shuffle, but also even if, for example, you have, let's say, 40 cards in the graveyard, which is quite a lot of damn cards in the graveyard, it's still only a 800% increase, making this a 1000% damage total, which, as great as it sounds, as great as it seems, it is just 1000 damage, and in no way, shape or form do you further boost the damage of Renoa's main gimmick being her bullets. And as you can see, she doesn't have any crit chance increase, so that opens up the question that why don't you instead then just go and obtain Serathea from the Battle Pass. Serathea gives you the 8% crit chance increase. The big question here is obviously, does it go to the main set, right? Does it count for her potential? And then the ability to just stack up crit damage, and then here just extra damage and vulnerable. So honestly, Serathea isn't even that far away from the potential of a Kiara, and that's why we're kind of ranking Kiara a little lower on the priority list. Alright, another unit, and that is a Marianne. So Marianne we are actually also going to put into B, but why? So Marianne's effect currently, which is different from the way it was during the closed beta test, is that she increases the damage amount of the assigned combatant when attacking ravaged enemies, meaning 15% extra damage should the target that you're attacking be broken. And the assigned combatant's basic cards always apply as weak point damage and plus 5% weakness damage, meaning that instead of the usual plus 25%, you're doing plus 30% damage to targets that you're strong against. And then we have the Bloodstalker, which is just a flat out 350% damage. So a couple of, like, I guess you could say a little bit of the issues here is that for most characters, she is very broadly applicable to all strikers, but for most characters you're going to find yourself moving towards the end game that you're getting rid of these basic cards anyway, kind of negating this bottom effect of the partner. The top effect itself requires setup, requires planning, requires circumstances to come together for you to be able to attack an enemy that is broken. And now obviously for the main part, whereas she's kind of meant to be Malin's dedicated partner, Malin herself, unless you obviously get rid of it by, for example, swapping over to the crit chance build, like this then would be more valid. But in general, you most likely will still apply passion weakness with a Malin, making this whole, oh, your basic attacks are now type effective part of her passive again, pretty redundant, not that useful. And yeah, that's kind of the Marianne situation. And yeah, we've looked at the ego skill. The ego skill really is just a bit of damage. You have no way to scale it, you have no way to increase it. It is just 350% damage, and it kind of feels like there's a little bit missing for a 5-star partner that you would have to spend that big amount of an investment to get. So our next partner on the list is Marin, and Marin also definitely belongs in S tier. So Marin is Veronica's dedicated partner, and what she does is that the extra attack damage of cards generated by the assigned combatant's abilities increases by 15%, so that is referring to Veronica's Ballistas. And when a skill card is used for the first time by the assigned combatant each turn, plus 25% damage amount to extra attacks for one turn. So like for example your Repose, your Sir Kowalski's. Something that has to be said right here is that you cannot use Marin outside of Veronica or this part very well, like this top part. There's nobody else creating combatants abilities that could really make use of this. unless you maybe count Barrett's opening shot or opening found combination where she creates those, but that's kind of irrelevant. And yeah, it's a very solid boosting. It's extra attack damage boosting, more extra attack damage boosting. Veronica really is all about these extra attacks. And then to top it off, you also deal 200% AoE damage. AoE damage again coming in very clutch in various situations, as well as also the ability to draw yourself a skill card. So it's narrowing it down instead of just usually drawing. It also draws a skill card, has the option to draw yourself a Veronica skill card, a Repulse, a Kowalski to further continue cycling. And also another point on the list for why Marin is that high is just that Veronica currently, she's just so prevalent, she's pretty much everywhere, and she is by far at the moment the strongest sub DPS bar none, and making these ballistas even more deadly outside of just gear is something you should really be looking forward to or really working on. And it's also more of like a long-lasting investment due to her just basically slotting into every single team and benefiting so greatly, yeah, from her partner. Alright, next up we have Noel, one of the most selfish partners in that she legit only works with her dedicated unit or Leia, but that still doesn't stop her from being an A-tier partner. Now, besides having one of the most questionable designs I've ever seen and kind of forcing me to enable the card showcase to make it not look as weird, we have Noel. So what can she do? First off, she increases damage, shield gain and heal amounts of the assigned combatants' retain cards by 15%. Keep in mind she is a controller, she's a controller unit, so this passive only works on controllers. Or Leia currently the only real controller with retain effects. And at the end of the turn, you deal fixed damage to all enemies equal to 15% of each retained card of the assigned combatant, and also plus 5% damage for enemies with the instinct attribute. Something that's not quite clear is if this 5% damage for enemies with the instinct attribute is Leia or team-wide. That kind of would need further testing, but it still makes it a very strong passive. But then we have like a bit of like that saving grace or like that X factor, and that is the Legato of Faith. Heal for 100% and activate the retain effect of all cards held by the assigned combatant. And once again, we can just quickly go over a couple of these options and what they could do. So for example, the main use here would be on the slimes, right? So we have the ability to increase the damage of the biggest slime by 150%, heal yourself for 102, or what is the most relevant, increase the damage of the next attack card used by a multiplicative 20%, so the softie retain. So then, especially if you have multiple of these softies in hand, the damage buff just keeps and keeps and keeps rising, keeps and keeps increasing. And she kind of in her partner skill is pretty much like a Will of Light that you can activate without spending any AP and spending ego points instead. And then there's obviously multiple different synergies and multiple different epiphanies where you can take advantage of this. Like for example, how you could evolve the growing creature into a softie turn 1 instead of having to wait a turn, or even further boost the softies and the like. So pretty good synergy here, pretty good synergy between the characters, though also overall it's not like you truly need the partner to get that vulnerability, to get that damage boosting synergy out of your Leia. Now onto Scarlet. The S in Scarlet stands for S tier, so off we go. Let's talk about what makes Scarlet so great and so versatile. So, Scarlet is inherently a very selfish partner in that she prefers that the combatant that she is assigned to mainly just uses their cards in a row, but that doesn't stop her from being applicable to every single striker in this game, while also being easily the best choice for Rin, for Mei Lin, and other strikers like that. So she is just pretty damn good. Now, what does she do? As we have already briefly talked about it, if the card used immediately before was from the assigned combatant, plus 15% attack card damage, so additive, stacks up to twice, so going up to a 30% additive bonus. And then when the assigned combatant uses 2 or more cards, they gain the focus stance, increasing the attack damage of the assigned combatant by a further 20%. Currently, there's a little bit of a bug going around. It's unsure if it's an intended feature or not, but focus the way it works is you obtain the focus, then play an attack card of the combatant, and playing that attack card uses up focus, and then you can play another attack card of the combatant to build focus back up again to then remove it again. So that's kind of how it works. So it's like a pretty much after 2 cards you have a permanent 30% additive, and then a 20%, a break, a 20%, a break, a 20%. And as you can see right here, remove focus when another combatant's card is used. So it doesn't seem like that is the current intended interaction, but that's the way it goes. And even with that flaw, she is still by far the best partner for a Maylin, a Rin, and the like. And then we also still have the ego skill, which deals damage and also increases the damage of the combatant's attack cards based on the amount of buffs that apply to that character. So for example, if a Rin has her stance active, has a morale active, and then also like a resolve that affects her, it would be 3 buffs, and it would be 30% extra damage on top of every single one of her cards. This can easily stack up to like 7, 8, 9, 10 buffs, and then all of a sudden you're adding an additional 100% damage to every single attack card of that combatant for the whole duration of the turn, which especially on Rin, especially on Maylin, can just lead to some incredible results in, for example, adding a massive amount of damage to a potential 6-hitter with the Black Dance, with the ability to use Black Dance multiple times a turn with, for example, the move of Darkness, Secret Art, Destruction, or then with Maylin respectively. You also have the ability to just throw out a bunch of punches, move those punches back into hand, throw out a bunch of more punches, and then also increase the damage of the of the finisher card that does 1 extra hit for each passion card used. So there you go, that is Scarlet. Next up we have Tina, and there's still a couple of questions in regards to how Tina truly interacts with Hugo, being Hugo's dedicated partner, and that kind of, at least at minimum for now, leaves her in A tier. I don't think she's truly that needed for Hugo, verifying or justifying S tier. So let's have a look at her kit a bit more in detail. So Tina, what she does is she increases all the attributes extra attack damage by 15%, making Hugo the only one that can truly benefit from this, as well as also increasing the extra attack damage from targeting attack cards. Like this plus 25% extra attack damage from targeting attack cards, that's kind of the question in how does this truly interact with Hugo, and how much stronger is this passive with the 15% with the a bit more cryptic plus 25 versus, for example, somebody that you have more easily access to, somebody that you can even potentially rank up into the level 3s, level 4s, like Rosaria, who gives you a, even at base, plus 10%, that obviously goes higher with with level ups and financial support, and then also has the chance to give you morale when using an upgrade or skill card, as well as also the ability to deck search for an enhanced card. So for example, if your Hugo loses the Outbreak of War, you can use this to get that card back, whereas that's kind of what she does here. So this is just 1 draw in her skill, but what then again goes in favor of Tina is the fact that Tina also furthermore for the turn increases your extra attack damage by 30%, so further multiplicatively increasing your extra attack damage for the whole turn. So Tina, she is definitely, not necessarily definitely but she's probably the best option for a Hugo, just not someone that's like super high on your priority list, needs to be first bought, unless you're obviously a true Hugo main or are looking for ways to invest into your Hugo rather than investing into more effective partners, if that makes sense. Alrighty, second to last, and that is Westmacott, our newest partner, who is a partner to Yuki. Now, where would we rank Westmacott? I would probably also put her somewhere in A tier, in kind of like this Tina level of tier. So what does she do? So Westmacott is a striker partner, and what she does is that the attack cards of the assigned combatant drawn through that combatant's ability, meaning through the combatant either using her partner ability, as you see in a bit, or using a draw ability. It doesn't have to be inherent to her kit, or their kit could also come from the outside, like for example a belligerence could allow that combatant to draw more cards. And then if you basically only the cards that you draw through an ability get a plus 25% additional damage increase. And I guess the bigger selling point here is that the damage amount of the assigned combatant's cards that have inspiration by 10%, mainly making her pretty damn Yuki specific, pretty Yuki reliant in getting the most out of this partner as a whole. When it comes to the damage buffs here, it is probably, so long as you can reliably draw, the best damage increase you're going to find for your Yuki, where for example you have the 25 additional 10% multiplicative. And in comparison to that, if we, for example, take a look at Lillian is only a bunch of additional multipliers rather than having a multiplicative one in there. And then I guess you could say a little bit of a saving grace, but also a little bit of a weird one for other characters is the last part of Westmacott, and that is the move one card from hand to draw pile, draw one of the assigned combatant's cards. So the way that works is you can pick any card, doesn't have to be a Yuki card or whoever you have assigned to, and just put it into your deck and then just draw a dedicated card. If you put, for example, a Yuki card into the deck, you also will pull that Yuki card back out, triggering its inspiration, triggering this effect for the card. And that is then that. But this can also be used to, for example, interact with the season cards, like putting a season card from your hand back into the deck, like the one that gives you 1 AP, 1 draw, if you then draw it again, or even just in general allows you to get an additional card for the combatant by just putting a different card of somebody else into the deck and pulling a combatant card. But it's not something that is truly unique to her, in, for example, Lillian also having the ability to draw one attack card from the assigned combatant, so you're also guaranteed to draw an attack card, whereas with Westmacott you could get like a skill card or upgrade card, which depending on the situation is either better or worse. It's a bit more situational. But the big, I guess you could say, gain is that, for example, Lillian herself wouldn't work if, for example, you're using specific Yuki epiphanies that lead to her having like 2 costs, or for her 2 cost basic, where you would then, for that Yuki, maybe even have to pivot over to somebody like a Ritoshka to, you could say, get the most out of it. So that is then Westmacott being in kind of like a little bit of that weird spot, but for the most part, as of this moment, only really shining on Yuki. And then last but certainly not least is Zeta. Zeta, another S tier no-brainer. So let's have a look at what Zeta can do for you. So Zeta, a Vanguard partner that increases the defense-based damage of the assigned combatant's instinct cards by 15%. You already know where this is going. She is Calip's dedicated partner. No other Vanguard with instinct cards as of this moment exists. And when the assigned combatant defense-based damage and shield amount for Celestial card becomes plus 25%. So you're getting a 15% multiplier to instinct cards, as well as also a 25% additional damage bonus to her Celestial cards. So mainly referring to pretty much the Vulture ejection. So yeah, Deadly Poison is pretty damn effective on Calip. It is the biggest damage boost you're going to find from any partner for a Calip. And then to finish it off, you have Undertaking the Mission, 200% damage, and also draws 1 highest cost card. So should a Vulture launcher exist in either the draw pile or the graveyard, you are going to be able to draw that unless you've played it this turn, because it's a draw rather than a move. So this one can, for example, replace a rally, help you get even more Vulture ejections into hand. Vulture launchers, Vulture ejections, kind of same thing. And yeah, you can also obviously take advantage of this even more if you have multiple. So if you have one on the hand already, you can get yourself a second one, get yourself, for example, a third one, and then just shoot that, yeah, vulture ejection madness. Khalib herself, she's just damn good. She's still damn popular, and she is still as well deserves a partner. So these are then all our rankings, I would say, for all the current available partners in the game, leaving us with 4 4-star options, or 4, yeah, premium S tier options. One is for Kayron, one is for Veronica, one is for Khalib, and one is for pretty much every single fighter available in the game right now in Scarlet, or Striker, I guess. Should also, unless something weird happens, be good on upcoming Shizuru. Though keep in mind, Shizuru will come with her own partner, and with everything we can glean, she's probably gonna be a striker. So we might just see a bit of an upset there, depending on what Shizuru can actually do. And then we obviously have our Asteria, Janet, Noel, Tina, Westmacott, Erika, with the only real, I guess you could say, disappointments here being mainly Marianne and Kiara, not quite doing as much as the other partners above them in the tier list. Peace!